Look, I don't need to beat up a dead horse, but as some of you might know, I'm a recovering gambling addict. I made a few videos pointing this out, and I'm right now undergoing group therapy about it. I feel like some of you might find yourselves in a similar situation when you try to fill up a vacancy in your life with some instant gratification thing, and that's probably part of the course when it comes to things like gambling addictions and the sort. We've all been looking for dopamine, right? Now, why do I say this? Well, as a recovering gambling addict, when I look at something like Call of Duty, as it is today, I find it offensive. Call of Duty is a fentanyl of video games. I already rage quit a lot from Warzone matches to know the ethical implications of all of this. I even crashed the game when redeploying several times. I don't either want to beat up the dead horse about how Black Ops 6 is a broken game, or how unfun it is, or how it is rampant with cheaters, or anything like that. Let the experts in the field already cover that. But this franchise has generated $30 billion in 2022. Are you basically telling me that a franchise that made that much and was made by 7 fucking studios isn't able to fix basic shit? There must be something to the secret sauce moneymaker that Call of Duty is into. I wonder it's gambling. Okay, let me explain. Call of Duty has a lot of designs that resemble taking notes from gambling in casinos. And even worse, and I know a lot of you will not take this seriously, which is fine. Just admit the Call of Duty brain rot just completely seeped into your brain. But obviously, this has some ethical concerns in terms of game design and development, especially when those sorts of practices are so predominant in the AAA game industry right now. An addiction to something, whether it is Call of Duty, gambling, or anything, can be devastating to a whole lot of people. In terms of mental health, and especially, and I know this because I tried enjoying Call of Duty, but this is pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. So to explain how the Call of Duty thing is worse than gambling, let's talk about a matchmaking system. Call of Duty's so-called skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, is a contentious topic amongst many of the Call of Duty community so far, not to say controversial. There's a constant sea of claims from the Call of Duty community in regards to skill-based damage and the sort, where it might just seem like a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy theory stuff. But if there's anyone feeding off these conspiracy theories, it's Activision, by literally dick-slapping the electric fence, in a metaphorical sense of course. I think that has been on the Call of Duty community's radar for a bit is Activision's Call of Duty intel and white paper for their matchmaking system, which for some completely justified reason has riled up at least half of the Call of Duty player base for a bit. According to this said intel, this is the skill-based matchmaking, which is aimed to create fair matches by pairing players of similar skill levels, which sounds fine on paper until you realize this is just PR speak. They say they measure things like KD ratio in game while failing to account to other factors such as cheaters, smurf accounts, so on and so forth. Let's look up the word cheat on both a blog article and a white paper. No mention of it at all. Not to mention cheaters are such a prominent problem in Call of Duty, not only because Ricochet anti-cheat is doing fuck all about it, for which if you find a match without cheaters it might just be because Ricochet glitch, but also this lately creates a negative feedback loop into the game, putting even minimally skilled players with KD ratios of around 1 into shadow ban lobbies, which is pretty screwed. A part of the blog post, however, caught my eye. Does spending money on Call of Duty content such as bundles, battle pass, or black cell change how players are matched? Money spent does not in any way, shape, or form factor into matchmaking. This part right here is a smoking gun ball. Case closed. I'm pretty sure this is a solid statement from Activision, the Bobby Kotick of the games industry, which is a blatant lie. These pieces of shit at Activision patented this in 2015 regarding a matchmaking system. This is not skill-based matchmaking. It is engagement-optimized matchmaking, or EOMM for short. And the patent abstract clearly reads, A system and method is provided that drives microtransactions in multiplayer video games. The system may include microtransactions arranged matches to influence game-related purchases. For instance, the system may match a more expert marquee player with a junior player to encourage the junior player to make game-related purchases of items possessed used by the marquee player. A junior player may wish to emulate the marquee player by obtaining weapons or the items used by the marquee player. You don't probably notice it, but they say the quiet part out loud. And it gets worse. Okay, so let's dig deeper into this pattern for a bit. This pattern is most likely based on the results of a study made by mostly EA employees, which I'll tackle later in a bit. But the pattern deep within it is not caring about the engagement optimized matchmaking here, as it details that this system will identify an in-game item that is relevant to a first player but not yet possessed by the first player for gameplay in a multiplayer game, identify a second player that possesses the in-game item, and match the first player and the second player to play in a gameplay session to encourage purchase of the in-game item by the first player, wherein the matching is based on 1. The relevance of the in-game item to the first player, and 2. The possession of the in-game item by the second player. This is a usual carrot on a stick trick to incentivize newer players to purchase in-game items earlier, such as Tracer Pack Bundles, Battle Passes, or Black Cell. Don't waste money on Black Cell though, it's just a waste of money. But the key important thing here is that if this pattern is ever applied, they will contradict the FAQ answer we mentioned earlier by a mile. This pattern was applied between 2015 and 2017 as well, and you might want to know whether a Call of Duty game released during that time. That's right, Black Ops 4. And everyone knows how bad Black Ops 4 is. Black Ops 4 was to be considered the black sheep of the Black Ops series, being in hot waters for one of the Call of Duty titles with the most aggressive and predatory monetization practices. It even had loot boxes, gambling for little Timmy. Nowadays, now with the release of Modern Warfare 2019, 2 and 3 alongside Warzone, we have now no loot boxes but bundle packs, which might be slightly better than having a literal slot machine for little Timmy. But considering the pattern was released around the same time period, one might suspect this was all practically applied around that time in any of those Call of Duty titles. It's a bit silly to call it now skill-based matchmaking, a thing that's designed for fair play. I mean, the pattern's titled a system and method for driving microtransactions in multiplayer video games for Jim Flynn's sake. But yeah, you might argue that if the game only counts how much money you spend on cosmetics in-game, then anyone might be just doing a pay to win and smash every lobby possible, stomping around the little Timmies out there in Warzone, but you'll be clearly wrong. As I dug deeper, probably with the help of a Reddit user at Black Ops 6, it gets worse, because it doesn't just count how much money you spend, it also counts how much time you waste in-game. Usually, the more you play a game for longer periods of time, the more inclined you are to purchase microtransactions. At least that's what the AAA game industry believed for a while, because they know how the system of exploiting vulnerable people works. Games, especially the AAA ones, have to design their gameplay around sucking up as many playtime hours as possible, so the engagement with not just microtransactions but also the game in general is more likely. And some scientists, including some EA employees, because it had to be about the worst companies in the planet after all, figure out a system that sucks up to the life force of the players. This is where the aforementioned engagement optimized matchmaking, or EOMM, comes in, as put in said study around 2017. I'm not going to explain the whole math behind it because, let's face it, Call of Duty players don't usually understand advanced algebra, but this study proves EOMM is designed to maximize players' engagement rather than just balancing skill levels. In layman's terms, it reacts to how many lobbies you win or lose to measure an engagement metric, which predicts when you're just going to quit the game out of boredom or frustration. EOMM pairs players on for retention in a way that tickles their brains enough to be excited or motivated so they keep playing. This obviously isn't an exact science, because to everyone their gaming tastes are invaluable time, but this all ties nicely very appropriately to the prior activation pattern for a matchmaking system, which already sounds like a deadly combination. It doesn't just count how much money you spend, but also how much time does a game suck out of you. Even then, the study proved, using data from a rather popular multiplayer game, that matches made using EOMM kept players engaged longer compared to actual SBMM, and it created matches that adapted to the player's emotional states, such as giving someone a confidence-boosting win after a streak of losses. This obviously goes back to the patent for a bit, because Call of Duty's success, as evidenced here, is not only dictated by how much money people spend, but also how much time people spend in-game to be eventually driven at some point to spend more. As an additional note, I tried a tiny experiment on Call of Duty that a lot of you might call stupid, and I know it's stupid on my part, but I tried buying off $40 worth of bundles to see if they will give me an advantage. And I noticed I had a feeling some of the kills got easier. I didn't spend like a long time playing the game, so probably Ricochet. I mean, Call of Duty is still calculating my odds, but it's clearly evident the game is a bit rigged. And then I played Black Ops 6 multiplayer, and I got repeatedly stomped on by what I assume are the people chew-boxing, using VPNs to bypass the god-awful EOMM system and stomp on these little Timmies that are so unlucky to not be able to use a VPN or do chew-boxing. Definitely it was just frustrating, and it's definitely rigged, especially against people who don't spend as much time and money into this game. But the important question remains, how is this worse than gambling? Oh, hold the phone, fucker. It's very usual that people, especially in the Call of Duty community and more so on YouTube, notice that they're being manipulated, which is one of the risks Activision acknowledged in their patent, although they still went through it because they're not the sharpest tools in the shed. Why is this? Because the majority of people who are into Call of Duty and are vulnerable enough to these tactics won't notice it. Okay, so let's say Activision didn't put the system in place in any Call of Duty game yet. Even if that system has not been realized yet in any entry in the franchise, the fact that Activision has filed a patent indicating they're so willing to put such a system in place where they draft players to spend more money and time in the game is evidence enough to raise eyebrows and some ethical questions in a way. If it wasn't clearly evident this is worse than gambling, you'll also notice these types of designs in gaming have some parallels with casino design as well. You don't need me to explain the whole ordeal about variable reinforcement ratio and the Skinner box thing that we already explained in an older video, but these EOMM system scenarios that subtly reward players after losses are similar to the slot machine's unpredictable payouts. I already said how the game incentivizes a junior player, making them lose repeatedly and someone with a premium weapon in order to make them buy said premium weapons to compete. And this is also similar to slot machines' near misses, the illusion of being close to winning. You know how casinos usually track you while you play? They even offer free drinks while you're playing slots just so you can get drunk and spare more money recklessly there. Similarly like this, Call of Duty analyzes through AI algorithms churn risk, spending habits and playstyles to create tailored matchmaking and monetization experiences. So maybe the more you spend in money and time, the more likely you're going to have it easier. There's even a sort of sunk cost fallacy here, like gamblers are compelled to play more to recover from losses or maximize returns. Call of Duty sort of compels you further to need further purchases to remain competitive. I swear to God, esports have that damaging impact on the gaming scene. Back when I was playing Black Ops 6 multiplayer even, I felt like that same sunk cost fallacy coming in as some sort of recovering gambling addict PTSD type of thing. This all has a deeper impact, especially for really vulnerable people to addictions, and like recovering gambling addicts like myself, this creates a plethora of mental health problems as well. For starters, this can lead to gaming addiction, which similarly to gambling addiction is classified by the World Health Organization as a disorder, mainly characterized by impaired control over gaming and prioritizing gaming over other interests and obligations. Second, this EOMM thing feature that nudges our purchases can create a dependency on external validation and success, akin to the compulsive behavior seen in gambling addicts. There's even psychological distress, anxiety from consistent losses or the need to compete, or frustration and helplessness when they cannot afford and acquire in-game advantages, either in the form of a double XP token or a purchasable item. I especially felt this as I repeatedly got stomped on in multiplayer compared to Warzone, and I never had this much unfun in a game in ages. I recall getting multiple times to the first place in Modern Warfare 3, without as much frustration as Black Ops 6. Another one of the dark patterns present especially in Black Ops 6 has a similar effect on that of gamblers. You know how Modern Warfare 3 in a free-for-all multiplayer match, being second or third on a match or lobby will still get you a win? That completely got normally scrapped in Black Ops 6, where you're either first place or you're either bust with a defeat, but also the announcer chastises you audibly on a lost condition. This creates so much additional frustration to a player like me, in a way that it might drift someone to play for longer to try to get the first place or so, or at least a win in a lobby until exhaustion, frustration, or boredom, which is still drives players to be more likely to not just waste additional hours of playtime, but also to spend more on microtransactions, the all or nothing mentality that is prevalent in a lot of gambling addicts today. This can also create feelings of guilt and shame similar to gambling, where players might feel guilt over money or time spent chasing success in Call of Duty, particularly if outcomes don't align with expectations, like premium items not significantly improving performance. This can erode self-esteem significantly and increase feelings of inadequacy, especially in younger or more vulnerable individuals. Finally, this also can lead to withdrawal from real activities, relationships, and responsibilities. Casino-like systems exacerbate this as well by creating environments where players feel they need to grind or spend to keep up with peers. I've always argued about this. Nearly all of tech, video games like Call of Duty, social media, tech products and services, they're all taking notes from the casino industry and designing the products around their Skinner box system, a system that harms the most vulnerable of people for profit, and there might be more of it soon. Make no mistake, the people ruling the system are some of the most evil, neurotypical, cis straight white men in the planet. And if all it takes for stock price growth is to harm the most vulnerable, it will be a detriment to the mental health of the world to the point of catastrophic consequences. And stopping this needs to start somewhere. I am sick entirely of gaming corporations exploiting the vulnerable for profit. I am sick of the likenesses of Bobby Kotick and the sort massively profiting off of the misery of the many. And for that, Call of Duty, Activision, and Microsoft, they all must die. From the ashes of their corrupted industry shall arise a new era where the unheard voices of the most vulnerable consumers in gaming shall be heard. But until then, Activision must be killed like the fool beast it is, and will put every cent of my life to killing Call of Duty once and for fucking all. Stop playing Call of Duty. Semper Fi, motherfucker. Faithful to the core. Okay, maybe I was a bit too melodramatic. And no, this is not because DEI hires the woke mind virus developers. This is just because of executives at the top of Activision and capitalism. I'm not going to entertain for 1 second that very idea that nerds are trying to entertain about. Man, the Call of Duty community is such a mental asylum for 10% of the player base. The remaining 90% are clueless little teamies that go like, "Oh, finally, I installed 170 gigabytes of Black Ops 6. I can't wait to get into my first lobby." Fucking run, you fools!